Howdy, it's Tubalcain once again. This time with a short lesson on how to lace a belt. As you recall, recently I bought this 10-inch Logan Lathe, and the first thing I noticed was that the belt was ancient and worn and cracked. It's a leather belt, so I'm going to make up a new belt from a roll of belting that came with the lathe. The first thing I'm going to do is take the old belt off. Now be sure and turn the power off, or unplug your lathe when you do this, when you're around the gears and the belts. And I'm going to pull out the splicer. In some machines you're going to find this is catgut, but I'm not sure what this one is. It looks like it might be rawhide. Set that aside. And I'm going to use this old belt as the exact pattern or length that I want, and then maybe I won't even have to mess too much with the linkage of the lathe as far as the belt tension is concerned. What I'm doing here is I'm laying the old belt right onto the new belting and going to cut it to length. Just a little bit extra long to start with so I can trim it and square it, because I'm not sure how square that original end is. And this can be cut on a wood cutting bandsaw or a metal cutting bandsaw, and I don't believe that I'm going to be able to cut it. Certainly not with the scissors, and probably not even with a tin snips. This is some type of belting that is a fabric type, much more modern than the old leather. I hope it has the good gripping qualities of the leather, but I probably will have to use a belt dressing with it. So I'll meet you over at the bandsaw. This is my metal cutting bandsaw, and I'm just cutting it roughly to length, and I'm not worried so much about squareness at the moment. And that takes nothing to cut, and it looks like I got enough belting left in the floor to do about 10 more belts. A lifetime's worth at least, since I prefer V-belts. The old leather belt is 1 inch wide, and this new belting is 1 1/4, so I'm going to rip it, so to speak, to the correct width on my Delta wood cutting bandsaw. And I've got the fence set for 1 inch, and I'm just going to trim it off, and I'm going to kind of hold it against the fence with a stick. Kmart, I think they went out of business. Used to be Kresge's. You older guys remember when it was Kresge's, a dime store. Now they have nothing but dollar stores. Keep your fingers away from this blade. If necessary, use a stick when you do this. And so on all the way through. I didn't like the smell of that when I was sawing it. It was kind of a rubbery smell. But now I've got a nasty burr on here. It's the fabric, really. And I have tried removing it on the little belt sander without too much success. So I'm going to use an alternate method. I'm going to use my little micro torch and just burn that fuzz off. I hope it doesn't smell too bad or cause the fire alarm to come on. But you can see that's going to burn it right off, and doesn't damage it. Makes a rather nice finish. And doesn't, oh yeah, it does smell, as the odor is wafting up to my olfactory senses. But I'll burn all of that off. I'm at the Rockwell Delta 6-inch abrasive belt sander, and some of you may think of this as overkill, but I like the ends of my belts like super square. So I've set up the miter gauge here, and I'm just going to sand it off and then remove the fuzz with the torch. But the reason I'm laying this board on here is I've had this happen with so many different products. When you're sanding something like this, that it'll get pulled down in there, and it could pull your hands with it. It certainly ruin the work. Sometimes if it was metal, you know, it would break the belt, and I've had that happen. many times. So that's why I got the board on here. And it won't take much to square this up. Just as square as can be. Not much fuzz on it either. Now what I'm going to do is take that over to the original belt and remark it to the exact length, allowing for the lacing, and then I will mark this end, might have to cut it, and then I'll square it up on the belt as well. But this is my square end, and you'll see a little later why it's important to have it square. You know, there's different ways of making an endless belt, and the oldest form is to glue it. And I'm not sure what kind of glue they use, but it's probably some kind of horsehide glue, which is apropos in that this probably is horsehide, but maybe it's cowhide, I don't know. Anyway, this one has been glued. This is the old joint on this Logan belt, and you can see the joint there, and then when you flip it over, there's the other part where it was glued. It's kind of glazed from riding on the pulleys. But this belt has been tapered or scarfed, I think might be the right word. If you can see that, it tapers off from here clear up to here, a distance of about 3 or 4 inches. And they want the thickness to remain the same, so that was kind of a difficult process, but there were jigs that could hold this, and Stanley even made special planes that were designed to scarf belts, especially real wide belts like they might use on some machinery in factory when everything was run by flat belts. But that's the good way of doing it. And then too, there is no particular place on the belt that lacks drive, because when this goes over the pulley, I suppose there's a small portion here, about 1.5 inches, that isn't getting much friction. Also, this makes a noise, a clickety-clack, and you don't get that with the endless glued belt. However, the glued joint, in order to take it off without, you normally have to cut the belt or remove the entire spindle, and that's something that you want to avoid at all costs. Now on eBay you can buy endless belts pre-made to your specifications, and they're not too terribly expensive, and they can be provided with a glued joint, but then you have to take the lathe apart, the spindle off, or with regular clipper type belt lacing. This is a page out of the South Bend How to Run a Lathe book showing how to lace a belt, but I don't believe anybody's going to do that anymore. And that's where they got the term lacing, because they were using a string or rawhide to actually lace them, and that shows the pattern. But let's face it, nobody's going to do that anymore. And there is the wire belt hook method, but we still sometimes call that lacing, or I certainly do. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do here presently. Here's some samples of different types of belt lacing I have in stock here in my own home workshop. And the major manufacturer for that was Clipper. I don't know if they're still in business, but that's the brand I like. But here's a different brand, Armstrong Bray. This doesn't look too terribly old, but you need to purchase the correct size for the thickness of belt. For instance, the number 2 here is for thin belts over small sized pulleys. That's pretty vague. The number 4 is for belts not over 1/4 inch thick, and so on. And this particular one is stainless steel. And that's some of it that's in this box. There was another kind like this. I don't care for that because it really makes a clickety-clack sound as far as I'm concerned, especially on small belts, so that's probably not suitable for what I'm doing here. But in these other boxes here, this is very old lacing. There are different sizes. There's a number 2, and that's marked Clipper belt lacing. And yet another box of it. But this is the size I'm going to use. It isn't marked, but it's a rather small size. I know I'm talking too much, and some of you are thinking, well, you just get on with it. But I wanted to explain a few things. And one is that you want the belt to go in perfectly perpendicular. Now remember the effort I went to square this, so probably just pushing that down into the lacer is sufficient. But you can also double check it with a square. I got a little brown and sharp square here. And then I believe that this other part here that is chained onto it can be set in there just like that to help you square it. I think that's what that's for, and I'm going to assume it is, and matter of fact, that's what I'm going to use. Clipper made all different sizes of these belt lacers, and this is the kind that you just hold in a regular bench vise. They had different widths, and it is marked Clipper. Not very clear anymore, but it's also says Clipper up here. You can still buy something like this at Farm and Fleet. They're quite expensive though. And Clipper also made a very large bench mounted one that did not require a vise, and I think it was to be taken out in the field to lace large threshing machine belts, and it had a couple of handles that you pull down. Some of you might have seen those. They're highly collectible for some unknown reason. But this is the one I'm going to use in my bench vise. Well, my two grandsons have just joined me down here in the basement. Say hi, Jordan.
Hi.
Say hi, Juju.
Hi.
Okay, Andrew is 6 years old, and so he's going to
He's
7. He's going to get a lesson on this. First thing you got to do here with this lacing is to cut it to length. So you could tear it if a fella had a notion to, but I'm going to figure out how wide I need it, right there by my thumb. And I'd rather have one extra hook, and have it fall off or whatever. I might be able to use that, but I don't think I will need to, because that's how it's going to go. And of course it goes in like this. Now over to the vise. The Clipper belt lacing came with this little rod, and also this other thing here, which I believe is a square, and I'll show you in a second. But we got to take this rod and put it in a hole right here once the lacing is in place. So I'm going to do that now. Do that on the back of the vise because it wants to fall through. Now I'm doing this off to the side, and you'll see why in a moment. And I'm pushing it down, and you don't want to remove the paper yet. I'm going to push it down into the lacer like that, and then into the end goes the rod. Got to wiggle a little bit to get it in there. Okay. Now that holds it in place. Once the rod is in there, I like to get that paper out of there. I guess you don't really have to, but a tweezer works best. And these hooks are sharp, so you don't really want to put your finger in there. And so I pull that all out, but if you don't get it out, it's going to come out after the belt is laced. It just isn't very tighty to me, so I'll take the rest out. On a real narrow belt, such as this 1 inch wide, one set of hooks has to be offset to one side and the other has to be offset to the other side. So the placement of the belt into the hooks is important. Not the first side so much, because we will compensate for it on the second. And invariably with these narrow belts, you run into one hook that is basically kind of running off the edge. Here's another piece of leather belting I had in stock, and this is way too thick and way too wide to use for the Logan Lathe, but I'm just showing you that on leather belting there is two sides. One, I believe, is I think this is what they call the flesh side, and the other was the hair side. And it is the flesh side that needs to go near the pulleys. Probably doesn't make too much difference when you're putting the lacing on, but it does when you put the belt onto the machine. And this side will also hold the belt dressing. where this side is much more glazed and doesn't have much friction. But on this synthetic belting that I'm using, I don't believe it makes a bit of difference, but I just thought I'd throw that in free of charge. I know I'm talking too much, and some of you are thinking, well, you just get on with it. But I wanted to explain a few things. And one is that you want the belt to go in perfectly perpendicular. Now remember the effort I went to square this, so probably just pushing that down into the lacer is sufficient. But you can also double check it with a square. I got a little brown and sharp square here. And then I believe that this other part here that is chained onto it can be set in there just like that to help you square it. I think that's what that's for, and I'm going to assume it is, and matter of fact, that's what I'm going to use. Alright, and here I go. And I've got the belt held down into the clipper belt lacer, and I'm double checking with this. It appears to be perfectly square, and now I'm going to tighten the vise and bring the belt hooks, and I got into the belt, and I've got to exert quite a bit of pressure here when I do this. I'm grunting, Jordan.
I can hear that.
Alright, let's take it out and see what we got. And you got to pull the pin, the grenade pin, like that.
Bravo, Grandpa.
And out it comes, and one looks like it came a little bit off the edge there. But I think it's going to be alright. Kind of hard on a narrow belt. Okay, I am now getting ready to apply the hooks to the other end of the belt, and I'm trying to compensate here. And if I can get the camera in a little closer, so that the belt runs true when I'm done with the job. And I think I got the belt placed where I want it, so
here we go.
I'm only grunting to show you that I am applying effort to it. Take it out, Jordan. Wiggle it. Straight up. Straight up. There we go.
Alright, let's see if this works.
Extra hook right there.
Let's see if this works.
Get her in front of the camera here.
Yep, sorry. There we go.
There we go. I'm going to take out this one here, which is going to serve no purpose because it barely caught. But I think the alignment that I got there
it's pretty good.
Is, see, we don't want it like that so it's off to the side. We want it so it's
yeah, that one
even.
Side is
so I'm going to pull this one out on the very end. I'd rather have that extra one and do that, but you see that's got no grip at all. That's going to tear out. Okay, you cat lovers, plug your ears, but this is a piece of cat gut that was in the kit here, because this lacing is ancient. See, it's water stained, and so this is, I believe, a real piece of cat gut, and it actually was the intestines of cats. I don't know if it was wild cats or domestic cats or a lion or what, but it was a very tough material and was also used in guitar strings years ago, as you remember. But that is an excellent splicer. They probably don't use it anymore. They got some kind of rawhide, or I'm sure it's just a thin synthetic. But the cat gut is put in there, and I will cut that to length. And I think that I'm reasonably satisfied here with my alignment.
I would. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So let's step on over to the Logan Lathe. I'm going to cut that off with the side cutters. Alright, I've run the lacing through the belts, or through the pulleys rather, and I have an assistant now. Say hi, Jordan, again.
Hi.
He's holding the belt tension lever toward me. Is it toward me, Jordan?
No.
I pull it toward me. Oh, I guess I want to go the other way, away from me. There we go. And now, the proof is in the pudding, you know. So we'll bring that up, put the cat gut in.
Funny word.
Yeah. And when my mother explained to me that catgut was used in her ukulele, that was back in 1949, I was shocked by it, and she explained it to me. And I'll cut the catgut meow off. Alright, Jordan, unhand that thing.
There we go. It's in place. Boom.
Alright, I'm going to turn it on. Step back away from the machinery, Jordan. And I just plugged it in. And there it is. Ta-da! You know, I don't hear any clicking either. You hear any clicking, Jordan, as the lathe?
A little bit as it goes by.
Alright, I guess there is just a little bit. You know, I have no hearing left, so Jordan detected that. Turn it off. Now, the catgut probably will wear in a little bit, and then I'll check the tension, but I cut this belt so it was exactly the length of the leather one, and it seems to be the right length. And there it is, gentlemen out there in YouTube land and you lathe owners. That is how to lace a belt. Leave your comments if you like this. Be sure and subscribe to my channel. This is Tubalcain saying so long for now. And Jordan?
See you later. Hey, from your
Just a quick note about belt dressing, gentlemen. This is a can of belt dressing I've had ever since I can remember. I don't even know where I got it. It might have been my dad's, but this is so old, there's no zip code on it. It says Detroit 35, Michigan. So that means it's prior to 1958 or 59, so it's really an old product. But it says on here, Belt Aid is economical and long-lasting, keeps belts clean and pliable, also gives them 100% pulling power. May be applied with equal success to all types of belts. So I'll take some heavy cuts and see how this belt pulls. And if there seems to be any slippage, then I will just squirt some right on this surface as the belt is turning. Not too much or it goes flying and it makes a mess. They also sell this in a spray. I think you probably can get it in automotive stores yet. And it also was sold in a stick, a big gooey stick that looks something like a caulking tube, and you tore the end off and just rubbed it on a belt. But that was meant for these 100-foot long belts that you see on threshing machines. And enough said about friction, but remember with these flat belts it's all about friction. And they were highly effective. Remember, they were used for over 100 years, maybe 200 years, in all factories as the prime mover of all this heavy machinery that they had years ago, even around the Civil War time, from water power or whatever. And it really was efficient and transmitted the power long before they had separate motors on every machine.